Dear Father God, thank you so much for us gathering here today, and let bodies be nourished with the food that we received and the knowledge that we're going to, get this evening from our speaker. And thanks for everyone being here. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to introduce our board chair, which is Ms. Clarence Lyons-Devon, and she's just going to give us a brief overview of who NAREB is, what we do, and why we're here. Clara?
So I just want to welcome everyone that's here. How many people have heard about the National Association of Real Estate Brokers? Heard, yes? No? Okay, great. So the National Association of Real Estate Brokers is one of the oldest trade organizations. You turn the lights on for a minute? You turn the lights back up.
Okay, are you gonna need anything, of talking about the initiatives on the thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
So you're gonna light the control.
I'll go with it.
Okay.
So you're gonna put it up?
Yeah, I'll put it up, but we'll
Okay.
have to wait if you, because it's on the top, you have to turn it on.
Lights down. Okay, thank you. So, it's one of the oldest real estate trade organizations. It was started in 1947, actually before the National Association of Realtors. And at one time, we had a lawsuit going on to sue for our names. And so we kept the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and the National Association of Realtors became the National Association of Realtors. We started as an organization for democracy and housing because back in 1947, not only was redlining going on, but people could not practice the profession of real estate in all communities across America. And so the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, dedicated for democracy and housing, over the years has been doing political initiatives to help real estate professionals in all disciplines be able to practice, and for people of color to be able to purchase property in whatever neighborhood they so choose or desire. Part of what NAREB stands for, the N is for networking, because we are an organization of realtors, home inspectors, security professionals, title companies, yes, cleaning services. We have members who deal in burial services, which is real estate under the ground. We have commercial real estate, so anything related to real estate, we have members. We also have something called community at large members. And you, if you're not in a profession directly related to real estate or impacting real estate, then you can become a community at large member. You can just go to our website, which is sjnareb.com, and you can join. There's no cost to be a community at large membership, but it basically says that you support the ideas of democracy and housing and what we're doing as an organization. We have a NATPAC where we do contributions to politicians, and one of our major initiatives that's going on right now is through Senator Meeks, and it's an initiative similar to, you know how you can set aside money for your child to go to college? So this initiative is for people to be able to set aside money for their children to purchase homes in the future. So it's like you can start saving now and put that money away for later, but it's going to be like a tax right or an incentive to you. So there are different legislative initiatives that we have going on, and people don't know a lot of times what NAREB does. So there's the networking, and we network here and across the United States with other real estate professionals. The A is for advocacy, and that's the legislative piece where we advocate for legislation that impacts people purchasing housing. A lot of people don't know that NAREB was responsible for the 3%, the 3.5% down payment program. So before, you would have to put down 20% in order to purchase a property. And we were like, a lot of people can't save that 20%, and we got them to initiate the 3.5% down payment assistance. The R is for relationships. The E is for education. We continually do every month Oh, you want to stand up? We got the shirt on. You got the shirt, he has the shirt on as well. Education, every month, every month we do educational workshops where on different topics, like tonight we're doing fair housing, landlord-tenant rights, and each month we do a different topic that is informative to the community and informative to our members, so that people have the information that they need. In April is our Realtist Week. We'll have a series of things that are going on in the community, but one of the main things we have going on is our Community Expo. And at the Community Expo, we do a range of educational workshops for the community to show you how to build wealth through real estate, either through investing, or if you are in a disparate situation and you need counseling because you're having some issues with your housing, we do that. We have lenders there because there are so many programs that are available where people can get into property for no money down, or where they can get down payment assistance. That money is still there, it's still available, from 0% down, 10% down, $10,000 programs, $16,000 grant assistance programs. There's a lot of money available to assist people with purchasing property. There are teacher programs, there are police officer programs. There is no reason that anyone who has a desire to purchase a property is not able to because of money. So we're there to provide the education. So the expo kind of goes over, we show you where the money is so that you can do that. We show you where counseling services are so that you can do that. And we also have community resources for utilities, for lenders. It's a range of information that day. So that'll be April the 18th. Put that on your calendar. We'll be at the the Kennedy Center in Willingboro. And the last B is for business, because we're about taking care of business and the business of building wealth through real estate development in the community. So we have about 8 affiliate divisions. We have an appraiser division, we have a broker management division, which is property management. We have a bankers division. We have a United Developers Council. And keep looking at me because one day you'll see my name as one of the developers of one neighborhood. Yes, I'm speaking it. I got my certification at our midwinter in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. We have a women's council, because you know the ladies keep it straight for everybody. We have a commercial division. We have a contractors division. We have an investment division. We have a sales division. And we have a young realtors division for our young people, because they're doing some really phenomenal things in real estate as well. So all of these are affiliate arms within the National Association of Real Estate Brokers to address all of the interests in the real estate field. This year, our incoming president rolled out 8 new initiatives. So I guess we'll put them up now. The main one is called House, Then the Car. And what we found out was that there are quite a few millennials who make over $100,000 a year who are not homeowners. They're living in their mom's basement, or they're buying cars, or they're living in high-end apartments, but they're not investing back in the community and build wealth. So I'm initially from California, and in California I have seen where property values went from $200,000 to $1 million. Same property, didn't change. Same property. What did that do? It displaced a lot of people who look like us. Lawnside, Camden, Willingboro. When I came to New Jersey, you could purchase a house in Willingboro, but property values had dropped. We were in a recession for between $80,000 and $100,000. Then they bumped up to $100,000. Then they bumped up to $125,000. Now that $150,000, $170,000, $180,000, $200,000. Property values for the same exact property is rising, and we really have to insist that people look at real estate for the wealth building tool as it is. For a lot of the people in this room, you borrow the equity out of your home to send your children to school or to do other things that you needed to do for your family. Building wealth in the community is the basis of our organization, so it's very important that we stress to our young people, and especially to our millennials, while they're of income generating age, that is the time. Even if they're not going to live in the property, invest in the property, rent it out. You know, they think of owning properties like, oh, I'm getting married, you know, I'm going to that step in life. It's not about that. It's about building wealth and building wealth in the community. So House in the Car is one of the initiatives. The other issue that we found was a problem was credit, that a lot of people either had their credit destroyed or whatever. So we partnered with a company, and it's called and it is a credit improvement program. Anybody can use it. You just go online. It gives you all of the tools that you need to see where you are with your revenue, whatever, and how to build your credit and get the credit scores back up. FICO just changed their scoring method. So if you have a credit score of 680 and above, it helps you. If you have a credit of 620 and below, it's going to make your score lower, and it's going to make it harder for you to, you know how they used to be able to bump your credit every 2 weeks? It's going to be harder to do that. So this credit restoration initiative is very important that we get people involved in knowing what it is and how to improve their credit. We have a program, an initiative called Rosie, which is Realtors Opportunities for Seasoned Individuals, and that's for folks who are over 60 plus, because a lot of our seasoned individuals are sitting on equity-free, not equity-free, they've built equity in their home over the years, and sometimes the children don't necessarily want the home, but there are things that you can do in terms of your retirement portfolio to make your wealth portfolio bigger than what it is, or actually even be able to purchase another property based on that equity in your home. So there are a lot of opportunities in that area as well. We have something called the Realtors Referral Network, which is under our relationships, where we can do business not only with real estate professionals across the United States, but we're doing collaborative efforts with churches, the NAACP, all of our social organizations, so that we can basically pool our wealth and our resources and be able to do business with one another. Civic engagement, Bid National, which is a new system that will put all of our resources, all of our homes that are for sale in one place. So we'll have our own multiple listing service, essentially. Our Realtors Investment Group, where we're pooling our dollars to do larger projects, and our international community. There's actually a large amount of people from other countries, from Africa, from India, from Asia, who are coming and investing in the United States, and that's a market that we typically don't spend as much time in, but it's a very important market as well, which is why it's one of our 8 initiatives. So I would just like to encourage you, if you haven't been involved with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the Southern New Jersey chapter is doing some phenomenal things. We would love for you to be a member of our local chapter. You can get information from Mr. Byard, you can get information from Mr. Ransom, from anybody who has on a Black Home Ownership Matters or a NAREB t-shirt in the room. You can get your questions answered. Our website is sjnareb.com. And you can become a member at large there, or if you're a real estate professional, we also have membership for real estate professionals as well. Anything else I'm leaving out? So that is who we are. That's who the National Association of Real Estate Brokers are, and I'm going to turn it back over to
Next we have Tammy Trotter, who is going to talk about why we're here. You just heard about who we are, now you're going to hear about why we're here.
So I'd like to say welcome to everyone as well. I'm Tammy Trotter. I'll tell y'all a little tidbit about me. I'm a Texas girl in a Jersey world, so as y'all can tell, I am not from New Jersey, but I have loved my 21 years here. Living in New Jersey has been a place where I have grown up. I've had many blessings here, many opportunities here, met many great people here. So I'm one, if you see me, I like to hug and say hello, and that's just who I am. But we are here, I know, for fair housing, and one of the things that's near and dear to my heart as a realtor, and like I say, I grew up here. I came here at 21, and I've been here almost 22 years. So one of the things that I've learned, my mother was also a social worker. So I've been on different spectrums of seeing people being mistreated in, physical way, because my mother was a social worker who removed seniors from their homes if they were being mistreated. She could never remove a child, so she didn't work in child foster care removal. But one of the things that I've noticed over the last year or two, that there are a lot of people going through fair housing issues that are either scared to report them, they don't know how to report them, or, like I say, scared is the most part, because it's very hard to find inventory sometimes in houses and things to do. But there are people here. We have people here that'll be here tonight that can be resources, and we want you to make sure you get their information, take down their email addresses, websites. We'll have Fair Share Housing will be up to speak with you about it, and also any realtors that's here, any realtor. I know Mr. Byard has been a staple here, a cornerstone here in Lawnside. So you have resources to make sure that we're all doing what we need to do to help, if not a brother, a sister, a niece, or a nephew, but to continue to keep our community strong in their rights. So I'll give you the definition of what they say. Fair housing is the right to choose housing free from unlawful discrimination. Federal, state, and local fair housing laws protect people from discrimination in housing transactions such as rentals, sales, lending, and insurance. So for a lot of people, as a realtor, I've grown to learn not to assume who knows what. So for those of you that are in the know, great. But for those of you that do not know, I know the other night I was watching Channel 6 News, and it was around, I think, the 12 o'clock show, and it was a now, present day redlining going on in the Philadelphia area. Now, I know we're here in New Jersey. It happens in New Jersey. And so everybody, please be aware that that is going on within insurance, within mortgages, and things of that nature. That is a violation as well. Now, proving those things can be sometimes of a harder task, but we want you all to know that if for any reason that you feel that you could have been discriminated against, I'll give you a story, and I'll start to ramble. I'm sorry, y'all. Sometimes I'm good behind the scenes, but I have a story about a young lady, single mother. She had 4 children. I put in her application, great credit. We could have found her a place, but because of timing of where she needed to get out of where she was, we couldn't find her. We couldn't find her a place, so we had to find her a rental. Young lady, I won't give too many details when it came to her last name and everything, but you know how sometimes we make assumptions about certain things. So, of course, on the application, I have to put how many people would be staying, adults and children. This young lady was turned down by 2 or 3 different landlords. So for me, myself, I'm trying to make sure I'm advocating for my clients, no matter what they're doing, if it's purchasing or renting. I get a text back from a realtor that says, that's too many people in a property. I said, so you're telling me, please tell me that you're saying, I want to get it in writing, that you're saying these children, and it was a 2-bedroom that she was getting. Now take it, certain cities and townships do have their regulations for certain things. But this particular guy tells me, no, the township won't allow for it. The realtor has already had issue with it. Well, I lived in that township at one time before. So all I had to do was make a call and ask the housing department. And they told me flat out, no, we do not have a limitation, especially if it is children involved. So that was one of the things. Now I found her something, because every time I brought it up to the realtors that decided that they were going to say what they said in a text, all of a sudden I got a okay, let me send you some leases over. So you have to make people aware and know your laws. So like we talk about the member at large, we love to have people, members at large, that's a part of our community, to come out and hear what we have to say, and then from there, we as real estate professionals, and we are not lawyers, we are not tax preparers, so we have professionals that can help you, so we have to always say that. We're not trying to practice law, we're not trying to practice, we're not tax preparers. We are professional, licensed professional real estate agents. We will get you to resources that can help. So that's all that, I think that I covered everything. So that is why we're here. I'm thankful to see everyone that is here. Did Charles arrive yet? Charles, do we have Charles? Okay, Charles is not here from the census. So we will have my buddy Elam. Elam is from Fair Share Housing, and he is the housing coordinator for Fair Share Housing, and he has a presentation for us. And I'm sorry, y'all, so we're going to make sure you're listening. So for those of you I know can't see as well, he's going to give his presentation. He's going to have it, but he's also going to speak to you as well.
Thanks, Tammy.
Good. All right, so my name is Elam Mackenzie. I'm a housing access organizer with Fair Share Housing Center. We're based in Cherry Hill, and I first want to start off by saying thank you to all the people that helped put this event together. It's a lot of work to get people to turn out on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. So I just want to say thank you to those people. I want to say thank you to Tammy for giving me the opportunity and chance to speak on this really important and great topic. We all know that New Jersey is a really expensive state to live in, especially for housing. I believe we're the sixth highest state for rent wages in the country. So that means if you want to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, on average, you have to make something like $29 an hour. And a lot of people don't make $29 an hour, especially if they're a single mom, just struggling, working hard to just feed your family and take care of things. If you have to make $29 an hour just to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, that's tough. And so, today I'll be talking about, affordable housing, my organization, Fair Share Housing Center, and the development of affordable housing in New Jersey. So, how many people here are familiar with the Mount Laurel Doctrine? All right, so we have a couple people. The Mount Laurel Doctrine basically says it's unconstitutional for any municipality to use its authority to prevent the development of affordable housing. So, the history of our work goes all the way back to the 1960s when Mount Laurel Township got a lot of federal, state, and local funds to build new homes, industrial parks, and commercial centers, but none of these homes were affordable to the longtime residents who lived in Mount Laurel. So back in the 60s, before had a lot of development, Mount Laurel was a really farming community, and you had residents there whose family history went all the way back to people escaping the north to come to the south for better life, better opportunities. So in the 60s, when Mount Laurel was going through these developments, the long-term residents who lived in Mount Laurel, the homes that were getting built, single-family homes, you had to make a decent amount of money to afford them. They weren't able to get access to these homes. So, they all got together and they went to the township saying they just wanted to build affordable housing, and the zoning laws for the township didn't allow for that. They just wanted to build single-family homes so that they could get a bunch of rich people to move in and collect some money. And we have this really famous quote when the township met up with the mayor, and the mayor told them, to the next slide. Hold on, a second. You know, the mayor told them if you people can afford to live in our town, then you're just gonna have to leave. That's exactly what the mayor told them. And so, these people got together with the South Burlington NAACP, Camden County NAACP, and Camden Legal Services, and they sued the Township of Mount Laurel. And that's where, we had the case go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we got a ruling that says it's unconstitutional for any municipality to use its authority to prevent the development of affordable housing. And so in 1985, the legislator enacted the Fair Housing Act. And since then, we've had 60,000 affordable housing units developed in the suburbs of New Jersey all throughout the state. And in the next decade, we're expecting another 50,000 units of affordable housing to get developed in the suburbs, in communities that have historically excluded people that look like us. So, part of my work as the housing organizer is to really make sure that people who need these homes understand and know where they are, and they know exactly the process they have to go through to get access to these homes. So let's go to the next slide after that. Yep. And that's where we get to the UHAC, the Uniform Housing and Affordability Controls. And those are basically the rules and regulations of that govern affordable housing in the state of New Jersey. So they cover affirmative marketing, which says how the developers are supposed to market the units to people who need affordable housing. It talks about income limits for people who are trying to qualify for affordable housing. We also have the application process. It explains how it's supposed to work if you're applying for affordable housing, what you can expect and what they can do and what they cannot do. We also have the selection process. So something that happens is, in someplace like Cherry Hill, they would have affordable housing available, but the people that hear about it are the people that live in Cherry Hill, people that want to move from places like Camden into Cherry Hill. They don't hear about that information. And when they have a lottery, people that get access to the housing, it's not people that need them. So part of my work is making sure that the developers, as they run through the process, they do things the right way. They give everybody a fair chance to get access to housing. And in the next decade, we're thinking 50,000 units of homes are going to become available. So people that need them should really get access to them, and given what's going on in the state, a lot of gentrification and people who actually are struggling and trying to just make ends meet and just live a simple life. They have nowhere to go. They're just pushed out, and we have a huge homelessness problem in the state. And part of our work is trying to address that. So and that's basically it. Anyway, I think the questions I'll be around later on to answer.
You can go on. You can answer like two, and then if you're gonna stay to the end as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
When you say developer, do you need big developers that are have huge projects, or do you need even if a person, let's say, were to find a home themselves, they're not a company, they may just have an LLC and they just want to put one house at a time. Are they being looked at as someone to fit that requirement, or are you referring to just large developers?
So what happens is town has to submit a plan. You have to put together a plan where they zone certain sites to allow affordable housing. So they have this project coming up. Saying this project right here, we're going to have 50 units of affordable housing. 10 of them are going to be set aside for affordable housing. And we have zones where right now it's not a residential developments that are going on, but you have a set aside ordinance that says if somebody builds a residential development over here, you have to set aside 10%, 15% of the houses and make them affordable. So that's how, in general, every municipality tries to meet its affordable housing obligation.
Thank you.
With the affordable housing, is that housing without, with private funds only? Now, could a private funded, project be considered,
Yeah.
affordable housing as well?
Yeah, so with the set aside ordinance, if you got money together, you went to, let's say Mount Laurel, and you said, oh, in this area, I wanna build a 50-unit, housing complex. They tell you, oh, yeah, sure, you can do that, but our ordinance says you have to set aside 50% of that 50 units and make it affordable housing. That's how we're gonna meet our obligation. It's the law, so they gotta do it. Take one real quick.
Okay, I want to piggyback off of Mr. Ray. We have a development in here right now, and there's a 26-page contract signed. There's 144 residential units, and we've been trying to figure out of that 144 units, does this law apply? You mentioned something about an ordinance. I don't think we have an ordinance that sets aside, but I was concerned about with the 144 units, secondhand information I'm about to give you ranges from $1,800 to $2,500 with a country clubhouse on the premises. And I'm concerned about, is there any way that we can make sure that this developer sets aside 10%? That would be 14 and a half units.
You know, that's unfortunate. Where I live, we just had two new developments that came up, and the rents are $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom. And you know, we don't. You know, if it happened after there was a set aside ordinance, then definitely they would have to, set aside, 15-20% of it for affordable housing. But if there are other areas in the municipality where the town already agreed that they were going to build affordable housing and have a higher set aside, maybe they could even build a 100% affordable housing complex. That's one of the first affordable housing developments that happened in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, with the Ethel Lawrence homes. And one of the lawyers from the original Mount Laurel case is Peter O'Connor. He actually started our organization. He's the head over there, and that's part of Mount Laurel Township. That's how they meet the obligation to provide enough affordable housing for the residents. But there are cases where there's no set aside ordinance in place, and the developer got permission to build, and they did, and they're charging $1,800 a month in rent. And, that affects everybody, because if you can't afford that, the landlord next to you knows that you can charge $1,800. They just push people out, redevelop their complex, and they charge $1,800. That's how it works. It's unfortunate, but
So,
yeah, I think we're gonna have to cut it off.
No, this is actually a good conversation, but one of the things in the advocacy piece, it's really important to go to your city council meeting and get with your legislative representatives, because all of those things have to go through city council planning to be approved. So if we are not at those meetings, knowing what's coming down the pipe, we miss those opportunities. But that doesn't mean it's still too late to hold people accountable for what you want in your community. So that's all I'm saying.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks. Appreciate it. But he'll be here through the rest of the meeting, and you guys can definitely reach out to him before before you guys leave if you have any other further questions. All right. Next, we're gonna bring up Mr. Charles Mayfield, and he's from the Census Bureau. So, Mr. Mayfield.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, I guess you can turn the mics on. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to try to make this and honor the wishes of those that asked me to come and speak to you today about the 2020 census. My name actually is Thomas Mayfield. I do live, I'm a resident of New Jersey. I'm what they call a partnership specialist for the 2020 census. I see I have some church members here. So this is sort of home for me as well. So what I wanted to talk about real quickly was, it's kind of a setup, and what you just heard about in terms of what you are facing in terms of housing. The census, be it the 2020, the 2030, the 2040, the 2050, is a big portion of what happens in everything that we do. In redistricting, housing, planning, infrastructure, House of Representation, school districts. So it's imperative that we participate, because if we're not counted, we're invisible, and those numbers go against us. We lost a seat of representation in 2010 because for the state of New Jersey, which we're considered a donor state versus a recipient state, we lost a representative because our count was at about 70% of what we really are in terms of this state. So with that being said, it's no different than being in Lawnside or being in Lindenwood or being in Camden. If you are not counted properly, you're going to be missing out on a distribution that happens every year for the next 10 years of $675 billion. And what the young man was just talking about in terms of housing and developments and stuff like that, a lot of the funding comes from us, the federal government. And it's only given based on a population. So when we think about what's going to take place this year, we go live, today is the 26th.
Yes.
We go live in 14 days. You'll get an invitation in the mail that's going to invite you to participate in the 2020 census. For the first time in the history, we've been around since 1790, you will be able to go online or pick up a phone and answer 9 simple questions. We ask less on the census information based on making sure that the count's right than you do when you go on and open up a Facebook account, you open up an email address. We ask basic as name, age, date of birth. When you go from person number 1 to person number 2 in the household, they're going to ask, well, what's the relationship between person number 1 and person number 2? So we like to keep it very simple. So in that respect, because you have online, over the phone, and you will ultimately have the ability to do it by paper if you have not self-responded. And then if you don't self-respond in the latter part of April, you will have that enumerator that will come knock on your door. You know we don't want people to come knock on our doors to ask us any kind of questions, so I would advise that you self-respond by doing it online over the phone once you get that invitation in the mail. But you don't have to wait for the invitation, because there's a locator number on that invitation that you would put into the online system, or if you talk to one of our, I'll call them enumerators on the phone, you give them that number. But if you don't have that number, all you have to do is give them your address and then complete the rest of the questions that they're going to ask you. It's imperative that we get these numbers right. I keep hearing every time I have a conversation or a presentation like this to a group, that's a 10-year mistake if the numbers are not right, that you have to live with. And you start to see that affect you based on the fact that things start to look a little differently. Your politicians, your cities, your roads are compromised because they have to balance the monies that they're getting. So if you have 100 people that you know that live in your city and only 70 participate, your politicians can't go to DC and fight for $100 for 100 people. They're going to look at the census. I'm the federal government. I'm going to be honest with you. Look at that number. It says you had 70 people. Here's $70 worth. Have a good day. And you have to compensate for that. So who has lived here in New Jersey long enough to know that taxes in New Jersey are probably at the highest?
Yeah.
So the reason why is, again, we fight a battle on a regular basis when it comes to the census. And then granted, it only comes around every 10 years. So out of sight, out of mind. So we miss out. So a 10-year mistake. Think about that. So again, I started out by talking about how easy it is going to be for 2020. We go live March 12th. Online, over the phone, by paper.
I don't want you to forget your train of thought, but I wanted to ask a question
Okay.
to see if you can dive deeper into it. I know it's very important to count the numbers, but I know some people are afraid because of maybe their legal situation and fear of being, but you can go online or you can go from payphone, but it's important to count the numbers. Can you talk a little bit more
Right,
about that?
So let's talk a little bit about the 9 questions again. So one of the things that was thrown out, and it probably had a scare factor outside of the dreamers now are still sitting to wait to see what's going to happen with them, was the citizen question. So I'm the federal government. For the census, we don't care about any actual thing outside of a person and a number in a household. And your information is then covered by what's called Title 13 for anybody that's a federal employee for the rest of my life. I can't give up any of your information to anybody inside the federal government, outside the federal government, or to anybody else. If I do, I can be fined up to 5 years in jail or $250,000 or a combination of the two. And like I jokingly say, I don't look good in orange, tan, blue, whatever. And I don't have that kind of time to give up for my wife. So on top of that, when you think about us as an organization and the safety of the information of what we ask for and what we're not asking for, what we're not looking for in terms of folks that are undocumented, folks that have warrants, folks that should be deported, I could care, but all I need to know is that you are residing in this household. And then once I get that information, it is locked in a vault for 72 years. That the information cannot be given to anybody else, and that's statute 44 that allows that information then to be offered up to like an ancestry.com.
So it's a two-part question. If you have a child that is over 18 in college in another state, one, do they get the census in her college mailbox? And two, if she does, how do I tell her to answer for New Jersey?
Great question. So it is definitely a two-part question. So any children that are in college, that are in a dormitory in a college, now if they live off college, they live in a separate apartment complex that somebody's paying rent for. It could be you, it could be the husband, it could be any, or the child themselves. Any student that's on campus falls under what we call group quarters. That also covers the homeless population at military bases. That also covers nursing homes, skilled facilities as well, assisted livings. That's done by a whole different division of ours that has been doing that since 1790. So they capture those individuals, because think about this, we are capturing you only once in the right place for those funds to then be distributed based on the services that they use, based on the time frame that they are there. So our date, our April 1st is the date that we call Census Day. So 18 or not, if they're in a dormitory, they'll be captured by somebody else in what's called group quarters. We'll be communicating with that college or that university or that establishment, be it a shelter, be it a soup kitchen, giving us information on those individuals that you are currently servicing.
So I do count her,
No, you don't. If she is,
but I'm still paying.
right.
I'm in no quantity paying.
And that's the catch-22. Unfortunately, on the question, and on the 9 questions that asked that, I always jokingly say this, and I'm amongst friends, so I'll say this. So the 9 questions has typically, and I'm not trying to be male chauvinistic, but typically if a male is doing it, and this is my child, this is my family, boom, I'm just going to jump in. I'm not going to read the instructions, sadly to say. I'm going to go in, I know it's got to put the name, follow the rest of the questions on there, and it'll walk me through, and then I'll go to person number 2, will probably be my wife. Then I'll go to person number 3, my first child, my second child, and then if they're in college, because I'm paying the bills, despite the fact that they live on campus in the dormitory, I'm still paying the bills, I'm writing them on my census form, right?
All right.
So catch-22. No, the instruction tells you not to do that.
Oh.
Tells you not to capture them.
So I should tell her to come home during the census time.
I got 3, they all going there.
That's why the census
Spring break.
Right, but again, everything has to be based on April 1st, even though we go live March 12th. April 1st is the go date. So even if somebody gets born after April 1st, they don't get counted on the census. You have the ability to still complete the census come April, May, June, leading into July, because we're still live and the enumerators will still be knocking on doors. But that person should not be counted if their birth date shows up, because again, what they're going to do is when we go in and we wash the system, we're going to look at April 1st is a go date, 2020. Okay? So if you put a date as April 24th, 2020, and you follow the rules, which is then the baby is not even 1 year old, so you put a 0 there, they're gonna look at that and say, okay, so that baby was not born before April 1st. So therefore, they cannot be counted in the 2020 census.
So when they're counted at college and
Yeah.
they have that whole thing, will the student have a chance to say, well, my home address is New Jersey?
No. No, it's a
So then
totally
we
different
really are
concept.
missing a great number of
No,
students.
but then controversially, that school that's in that township that utilizes those resources while they're there on campus, if that student was back here and they're not here most of the time, they're there on that campus, they lose out on all those resources.
But we don't capture them.
Because
For 10
you're not-
years.
No, you're not supposed to, because again, where they spend most of their time during the year, up until April 1st, that's where they're gonna be captured, because that's where they're gonna spend the most of the resources. They won't be spending it here. That's all I'm saying. It's a resource thing. So again, it determines school districts. It determines voting precincts. It determines, your infrastructure. It determines exactly how much money based on a number, not a name, but a number of folks that live within geographic areas that then you have the right people fighting for you based on what the needs are of that township or that community or that state. Right now, I'll say this for New Jersey, I just left the meeting for the Complete Count Committee. So you, as an organization, should be attached to my Complete Count Committee. Because your information and your questions and you getting the message out of what I'm talking about today is what they're doing as well. They're coordinating with municipalities, schools, local government and such. And now they're dwindling it down to then when you get to that population that potentially is an immigrant, I'll call immigrant undocumented, which we're not looking for. We're not looking for them. We're just looking to see if they live there, yes, that we document the fact that they live there, and that's it. Because we need that number to then support the needs for that community. That's what the drive is. That's what my messaging is now. I'll be leaving here shortly to then go to another meeting with the Young Democrats. Because again, a message to them has to convey a message to their communities about the importance. If you were here, who was at the Race Temple when Menendez and Jeffries showed up? If I could just take Senator Menendez around, his comments alone about the census were the most impactful words I have ever heard from even my leadership that's working for the New York region. When he started to talk about the census and the ways that it impacts our communities and how he challenged us that day. Then the next thing I heard, Stacey Abrams, her two pieces of legislation or of interest are voter suppression and 2020 census. The reason why, because this is the most important thing that we lack to do, and it becomes a mistake for 10 years every time we don't do it right, that we have to suffer from. And when you start talking about $675 billion, that's a lot of money. So again, getting back to the easy part based on the way that you can do it. Again, the safe part is what I talked about where I'm bound by Title 13. We have the higher security when it comes to the internet and also the phone, because the person on the other side of the phone is going to be just like me, bound by Title 13. And your information is instantaneously submitted to us versus what we used to have to do in 2010 and earlier. It was paper, so think about it. So you filled out that paper, you sent it back. Somebody like myself either had to receive it from you if you happened to give it to me because I was at some location where randomly you needed to complete it. If you lost your form, you threw it away in the trash because it looked like junk mail, you were never counted. Because you could not go to a post office, you could not go to a library, you could not go on the internet, you could not call somebody, the federal government, to get a copy to then do it. So everybody that did not fill out their form, did not do anything with it, throw it away or whatever, they were not counted. So those numbers are gone. Now, this is the greatest opportunity that we've ever had to not take it, as I call, take it to the streets to the extent that you can proactively do your census over the phone or online. So again, it's most important that we look at that based on when we go live. All right? So I said it was safe, I said it was easy, and now the last part goes back to the monies again. It's important. It's important that we don't make a 10-year mistake again, because think about it, we come back in 2030, we're going to be right back again, trying to fight for an individual and a young person. So our other area of hard to count is 0 to 5-year-olds. 10 years from now, they'll be 11 and 15. They'll be in school. They'll be utilizing resources that we have to plan for now so that when they get to that age, we have that stuff set for them, rather than having overcrowded schools because we didn't get the numbers straight. And that's where we have the challenge again with a population that's fearful of the government, fearful of giving up information, and it doesn't just include those that we might consider undocumented. The other sizable population that does not want to do the 20 or the census in general is young black men or black men in general. One, we don't know what it is. Two, we don't care about it. You know, it's just not in our psyche because we're looking at everything that happens on a regular daily basis that it does not affect us, but we do complain about things such as roads. If I got 22s on my vehicle and I'm getting dents and everything else, how are these roads? Well, if we would have done the census, it might have helped out somehow, some way to help with the roads to be repaired earlier. But it's an educational process that we have to know, and we talk about, my state people tell me that, you know, again, money is power. Well, numbers is power. Without the right numbers, you're not going to have the power to go fight for the right monies that need to be here in the state. So again, that's the important part about it. The message is, it is going to be very easy. I tell my groups, I say, challenge us. We're the federal government. Challenge us when it comes to a day and time that we're live. Pick up that phone. I tell my pastors, I tell the faith-based communities that we talk about. I challenged Pastor Townsend. I said, you know, we have, after the first Sunday we go live, I told him, I said, why don't you just say, after service is over, get your phone out and say, okay, everybody that has a phone, lift it up in the air. Follow me into the fellowship hall, and let's complete the census right now. It's that important. The other thing, too, we are doing a lot of massive hiring. So we have 64,000 applications trying to hire probably about 50% of those population because not many people stay on board because of a process that it takes. It takes 4 to 6 weeks for background checks, but I've heard it's been very sped up because we need manpower. We're trying to count 330 million people in 140 million households. That's a lot of folks. That's a lot of folks. I'm hoping the weather stays like it is because what we're seeing now is I have a lot of good things taking place in terms of my committees. Just like this, if we were on a live point right now, my challenge to you was, if we have 10 minutes, pick up your phone, let's make the phone call, let's call right now, let's complete that census. You walk out of here knowing that you did your civic duty of actually completing the census. So, like I said, when we go live March 12th, my challenge is, wherever you are, whatever event that you may be at, you might see us, hopefully we are there, we are encouraging that process. You do the same thing with your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, your families. I remember the first time I printed it out, and actually I did it for Rhonda, who is the councilwoman here in Lawnside. We were working, she's got a community in Camden of 5,000 people. She printed out everything I needed to know. I made her her own complete count committee because she knew basically everything that was going on there. I had her administrative assistant print it out because it's online, you can see the 9 questions. She printed it out. Now granted, it was 16 pages. She came back to me, she said, oh, Thomas, I am not doing this. She dropped it on the desk and just turned around and walked away. And I said, slow down, slow down. I said, it's 16 pages because page 1 is instruction, page 2 is going to be the first person, and then consecutively are 19 or not 16 other individuals that you could have in your household. Oh, okay, so that made a huge difference. So again, like I said, safe because it's, or easy because it's only 9 questions. There's nothing in there that is going to drive you crazy. We don't ask for social security numbers. We don't ask for party affiliations. We don't ask for credit card numbers. We don't ask for bank account numbers. We don't ask for any of that stuff. If you get anything in the mail that asks you for that and it says 2020 census, it's not us. We will never ask for that. If you get something in the mail that has money in it, we're not sending you money, trust me. So again.
Have you had any fraud at any time with the census, with the people's information?
Would you say fraud, meaning that somebody's tapped into or gotten a
Or
hold?
asked for social security number?
Well, Well, not us.
seniors and
Not
things
us, but
like
that-
that.
but
I'm
that's
just
why-
saying, during that time,
Oh, yeah,
are
oh,
those things
oh,
going
yeah,
on?
that's why I'm
as
saying
well?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that now.
Make
So
the
prepare-
seniors aware that, you know,
Yeah, exactly. Prepare yourself because it's gonna come. Somebody is gonna be out there. That's why we don't have the numbers out yet. That's why we don't have the actual website out yet, because somebody's gonna try to duplicate that, make it their own. So yeah, so share that information too on our website, which is sort of cumbersome. It's US Census. There is a page on there that there's an 800 you can call to verify somebody's badge, to verify if this is something of real census material. Now, I will say this, we have 130 other surveys that are very legitimate. The most prominent one is one that's called the ACS, the American Community Survey, that comes out. It's much longer than what we have now. In 2010, we had two. One was a long form, one was a short form. The short form is what we're using now for the census. But the American Community Survey deals directly with much more information. It will ask the citizen question on that survey. So,
What's the website?
it's US Census. Yeah, uscensus.com. And there's advertisements that are taking place now that both you'll hear from the state. So we're so close to Pennsylvania that the Pennsylvania is already actually doing advertising for Pennsylvania in terms of you count. And it's most important, that's the message, you do count.
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to, you were mentioning something about, like, if people are in nursing homes or, you know, just release child in college. How does that affect the prison population?
So the prisons are also captured under
Exactly,
group
yeah,
quarters,
that's
yeah.
what happened.
So group quarters again, because again, you have to think about populations, it's in the right place, only once and in the right place. So basically, they're gonna capture me once in that particular place. Now, I'll say this again, going back to what is typically gonna happen, which we've had happen even with the paper form, because, you know, sometimes we don't read the instructions, that we'll go ahead and put our child on there that is away in college. Well, we have a duplication process, that we will wash out that duplication. That we will see that, even on the form itself, that this person staying someplace else other than this household, so.
I got 3. Check, check.
So I have more information paper-wise that you can get when you need. So again, thanks for having me out here, but make sure you complete your census once we go live. Thank you, Mayfield.
Hey guys, we're almost done. We have Tammy Trotter, which is our vice president. She's going to introduce our guest speaker. And we're trying to stay on time here, so we're trying to get everybody out here and keep them moving.
Thank you.
All right, Tammy.
Chandra Bettner-Gray is a graduate of Rutgers University, Rutgers School of Law, and the founding attorney for Bettner-Gray Law Office. Chandra is education focused and taught as a legal instructor for the Harris School of Business and as an adjunct professor for drawing at Burlington County Community College. She sits on the Paralegal Program Advisory Board and is certified in real estate, continuing education, instruction, and instructor for salespeople. Ms. Bettner-Gray has committed 7 years of her life to developing and managing New Vision Community Development nonprofit organization of Burlington County as its executive director. She has since shifted her full focus to the growth and impact of her law practice and teaching, where she can continue her mission to encourage, educate, empower people. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh gosh, so I know you probably can't see that, you can't see that either, and that's okay. Y'all can turn the lights all the way up because even though
My eyes are actually only 30-something. They act like they're double that age, okay? So I can't see that well, so y'all have to bear with me. I was hoping for a larger screen, but we don't have that, so I'm gonna just do what I can, okay? So, first of all, as was mentioned, my name is Chandra Bettner-Gray. I am a solo practice attorney, although I just hired an associate who will start in May, so I'm excited about that. My office is was in Willingboro, New Jersey for almost 3 years. And in August, we relocated to Mount Holly, right like across the street from the courthouse, which is all the doing of the Lord. So I'm excited to have been asked to be here. Thank you so much to Tammy and to NAREB. I am a real estate attorney and a landlord-tenant attorney and estate planning. So those are my little areas that I've niched down to, and I like to focus on educating the community as much as possible. I won't be able to flow as much as I want because I have to keep looking, so again, just bear with me, okay? I am from Lawnside, kind of grew up here, right on Charleston Avenue. So those of you guys who are from Lawnside area, this is like stomping ground for me. My grandmother helped raise me with my parents, and she was right here at 155 Charleston Avenue. My kids went to Head Start right there in that building, and so I understand y'all, and I'm a part of your community, so I'm happy to be here. It's a full circle moment for me. Okay, so this is about knowing your rights and responsibilities, both as a landlord and as a tenant. I know maybe some folks are here looking for tenant rights, but I think because we're encouraging people to invest in property, own property, not just necessarily for you to live in, but perhaps for you to own and make money from, right? And in some cases, that's being a landlord. So I think it's important, no matter what role, no matter what hat you're wearing, no matter what role you find yourself in, to understand both the rights and responsibilities. Why? I know you can't see that, but this is more for me than it's for you. So why do we say rights and responsibilities, right? We like to focus in on our rights and, to be very excited about making sure our rights are not violated, but we don't always like the word responsibility, right? But attached with just about every right is some responsibility. So we do have rights against discrimination, we have rights for fair housing, but when we either are on the owner side as the landlord or on the tenant side, we have responsibilities in that contractual relationship. And we want to make sure that we're upholding our end of the bargain wherever we are, so that when we've done everything we can, when we recognize that our rights have been violated, we have a leg to stand on, whether in court or just in regular mediation, trying to figure out whatever our issues and concerns are. Okay, that makes sense? Okay, I don't even know what I'm doing. Okay, so discrimination ain't right. So I'm gonna just read this off of here. New Jersey law against discrimination requires equal treatment, which we've touched on already, and fair housing mentioned, in the sale and rental of housing, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, even familial status. So whether you're married or not married or single mom with a lot of kids, those are not grounds to discriminate against, right? Or be discriminated against. However, we know that it happens. But we need to be aware and we need to be unafraid of speaking up if and when we have to, okay? This law applies not only to when you're trying to get a mortgage, when you're trying to purchase, but obviously to landlord-tenant relationships as well, right? So we know that there's some filtering that goes on when people put in applications for rentals, and it's probably a little more difficult to chase it down because it's so much at the discretion of the landlord, whether they say yes or no. But if you're feeling like it's something like what Tammy talked about, like you're getting the no, not because of credit, not because of income, and it seems arbitrary, there's definitely reasons to speak up and say something to somebody who will advocate for you, whether an attorney, the fair housing folks, legal services, which I'll get to, okay? I'm gonna try to move quickly because I lost a little bit of time on this. So, again, if it's not fair, don't stay there. make sure you report it. So wherever the agencies are that advocate for fair housing and anti-discrimination, you want to make sure that you report it. Even if you know what, I applied, I recognize what's going on here at this application process, even if you don't want to proceed, but you recognize a pattern. When you hear from other folks, you've experienced it, perhaps if you're an agent and you're trying to get people into these properties or what have you, and you're recognizing behaviors that seem, again, arbitrary in their denials, you want to make sure you're reporting it. Because people are getting away with this stuff all the time, and a lot of times because tenants are afraid and tenants are desperate a lot of times for housing, that they accept anything or less than what they deserve. And so those of us who maybe are not in those positions but who have heard and know about things, we should take on a duty to report, okay? So let's talk about leases really quick. So the lease, you guys have heard about leases, just so you know, all contracts can be oral or written, including a lease. And it can be enforced and proven based on behavior. So if there is no written lease, but there are behaviors that seem to indicate that there is a lease, the court is very likely to believe that there is a lease. So if you and I have spoken about staying in your house, and you said to me, you can pay me $300 a month, and I have since been paying you $300 a month, and that can be shown when we go to court and one party tries to say, well, there's no lease, we don't have nothing in writing, the court will look at what the behaviors are between the parties to determine if there is a contract, okay? However, most rental situations are based on a piece of paper that's called a lease, okay? This is the framework and the foundation upon your relationship. I'm saying this because if you're in a landlord-tenant relationship, make sure that you are reading these leases. I have been a tenant. I have been in a situation prior to being married when I was a single mom, and anytime somebody offered me a lease, I just signed it. I did not appraise myself or apprise myself of all of the information of my rights therein, and I'm trying to get the word out to folks now. Please make sure that you read it. Make sure that you understand what the clauses say and all of that. Attorney review. So we know that attorney review exists when you go under contract to purchase a home, right? Or at least I think we know. If you don't know, attorney review is the 3-day period, not excluding weekends, not excluding, but it excludes the weekends and holidays, okay? So it's 3 days, technically business days, after you have signed a contract. In those 3 days, you can have an attorney review your contract, and if for any reason they find that it's not in your favor or you change your mind or what have you, you can get out free and clear, okay? Attorney review applies to leases. A lot of times we don't know that, folks don't know that, or they don't read, and so they don't see that that's in most leases. Even if it's not written in there, it applies, okay? So there is an automatic 3-day period after you've signed. You don't have to not sign. You can sign and you still are entitled to those 3 days to get out if you choose to, okay? All right. There is a Truth in Renting Act. This act requires landlords, and landlords should all know this because most landlords that I represent do not do this, which is bad. When they come to me, they're not doing it. When they leave me, they are. So when you enter into a landlord-tenant relationship, you should be giving, as a landlord, you should be receiving as a tenant, the Truth in Renting Handbook. It's supposed to be given to you. It can come to you by email or what have you, but you need to be getting it. And a lot of, I'll say, your rights, especially here in the state of New Jersey, are in that handbook. What a landlord can and cannot do. And there are penalties for landlords who are not doing it. But it's rare that landlords have to deal with those penalties because, again, tenants don't know a lot of times what their rights are. They are not reading, and they are not getting this handbook. Okay? But there are penalties, and there are some monetary penalties for landlords who are not doing what they're supposed to do with regard to this. Okay? So yes.
Is there any way you can get that book without, if the landlord doesn't give it to you?
All you have to do, yes. Now, you can get it, and you can even refuse it, but it doesn't stop the landlord's responsibility to provide it. You can, yes, it's online. All you got to do is Google Truth in Renting and NJ. Oh wait, let me just see. Every landlord must distribute, okay, I already did that, okay. And they're supposed to keep a current copy on them, but I don't know that they really do that. Not like physically on them, but if it's a landlord that has multiple units and there's a place that you go to pay your rent, for instance, like an apartment complex or something like that, they should have either a truth and renting poster or some sort of place where you can go and look at it available to you all the time, okay? Okay, so there's, I said let's pause on clauses. There's all kinds of things landlords can do in clauses, and you may not like them, but they do have some discretion to do some things. So they may say you cannot have a pet. Now this does not include service animals, which they can't, keep you from having. But for recreational purposes or what have you, landlords can say no. They can. Now, if there are, we talked about the housing occupancy standards, depending on the township, if there are occupancy standards and they can match what they're saying or requiring on a lease to the occupancy standards in that county, township, municipality, or what have you. Okay, and they can require renter's insurance. So sometimes landlords do, sometimes they don't, but they're allowed to. Okay, they can also put wording in these leases that say you have to pay attorney's fees in addition to late fees and those sort of things if you violate the lease in any way, or if they have to file eviction or any sort of legal action against you, you can be sued and you can have to pay attorney's fees, right? Here's the thing you guys should pay attention to. The courts will only enforce that if it says as additional rents. Okay, so if it doesn't say that and they just, and landlords should know that too, because I have landlords come to me all the time like, well, they need to pay and it says attorney's fees, and I'm like, yes, but it doesn't say the magic words, and so the court won't enforce it. Okay, so check as additional rents.
And that's specifically New Jersey.
Yeah, it may be. I'm a New Jersey attorney, so I can't speak to anything else. Yeah, and whether I represent landlords more times now. When I started my practice, I represented mostly tenants, yeah. And my landlords all the time say it's not fair and all that. But let me say this. Maybe it's not fair, but here's the thing about the landlord-tenant relationship. When you think about the scales of justice, they weigh heavily on the side of the landlord because you own the property. Technically, you have all the rights, right? So because of that, and in an effort to protect tenants, the court comes down on the side of the tenant. Now, will they say that? Maybe not, but I'm just telling you as a landlord-tenant attorney what I know, what I've seen. That they want to balance the scales. Property owners, a lot of times do what they want. They wield their power arbitrarily. It sometimes manifests in ways of harassment and all that sort of thing, and tenants feel helpless. Tenants sometimes can't even sleep at night because of the headache that a landlord is giving. I just want to say as a side note, considering that if God has given us or given you an opportunity to own properties or multiple properties where you can provide housing for people and yet you'll make money, these are people. And so just like when I teach my class, I have 37 students in my class right now. I'm teaching business law at Rowan and Burlington County. And what that means is I have a myriad of students that come from all sorts of households whose parents have taught them all sort of things, and they believe any sort of thing they want to about themselves and other people who don't look like them. And they have the great benefit of being taught by me. And what I say to them is, you are responsible for who you are and how you treat other people. And it's not just about making money, because we're talking about business law, so I'm always talking about ways in which you can make money. It's about integrity. And so if you have the opportunity to own property, if you have the opportunity to provide housing for people, do so with integrity. Find out what your responsibilities are as well as your rights to recover that rent and get that money, okay? All right. I do have my alarm on, just so y'all know, so when it goes off, I'm close my mouth. Terminations or renewals, I always have people contact me, can I terminate my lease? Can you terminate it? Yeah. Can I get you out? Yeah. But are you going to have to pay? More than likely, yes. Now I can help folks, right? There are some ways to mitigate what you have to pay out, right? So notice is one of those ways, like letting your landlord know in advance. Now there's some landlords that are, again, don't have integrity and they don't want to help you and they don't care if somebody dies. They don't care if you lose your job. They're going to try to do everything they can to get everything they can from you. But that's not who any of us are. But there are ways, okay? So I won't get into all of the ways, but I will say there are ways. If you feel like you're in a situation where you want to get out of a lease, there may even be ways if there are clauses in your lease that are illegal. So I definitely recommend that you speak to an attorney. Even if you don't retain one, like have a consultation with an attorney, if you're in a situation where there might be some clauses that are contrary to the law of your state, okay? And then renewals. Here's another thing landlords don't really love, which is why if you're going to get into being a landlord, you want to just do so fully aware of this. Once you have somebody in, it's going to be a little difficult to get them out, okay? So I'm saying that to say, if you don't want to renew for no reason, but you just don't like them, the state is not going to let you do that, okay? You don't get to just say, you know what, you did a year, I didn't really like it, I wasn't feeling you, y'all smell, get out. As much as you're laughing, I was representing a senior citizen gentleman who I think he may have had some issues with incontinence, he may have had some issues with cognitive ability, but nevertheless he wasn't classified in any way. And his landlord wanted him out on the strength of nothing, but he felt like he didn't like his smell. I can smell him, he said. When I walk by his unit, it smells, and I know it's him. We're laughing, but I'm just saying, this is, it's real life. It's real life. So we just want to make sure that we know what our rights are, that we recognize that we can't just kick people out just because we don't like them, and that the laws protect tenants against that sort of discrimination or behavior. You mean me?
At the end of their lease, you can't just evict them for arbitrary reasons. What are the reasons that are approved?
Well, that is a perfect segue to my next slide, which is grounds for eviction. Now, it kind of falls in there, right? Because, yeah. This is what I'm saying. There is no end to the lease, unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey.
There's no end to it.
So here's something tenants don't know. They assume because they signed a 1-year lease that they have to leave in 1 year. Even though I don't represent tenants anymore, they don't gotta go. Sorry, I'm sorry, they don't have to go. Yeah, so here's the thing. Landlord has to offer you another lease. Terms can be different, but they have to be reasonable changes. If the tenant says, I don't want to do that, and they refuse, now you can evict them. But it will always be eviction. Unless the parties decide that we're leaving, and they go separate ways.
So our current real estate lease says that as a landlord, the landlord has the right, I guess it's like 60 days before the end of the lease renewal to say they're going to renew the lease or they're going to terminate the lease. Essentially, they're going to renew it. So if they don't do anything, then the lease automatically renews. If they say, you've got 60 days to vacate the property because we're not going to renew the lease.
That is an unenforceable clause. And the only way it can be enforced is if they want to sell the property. Now, if they want to sell the property, which is one of the grounds that we call eviction, but that way it wouldn't function necessarily as eviction unless the tenant didn't decide, I'm not leaving until you make me good. The only way that works is like I'm saying, if they say, you know what, I don't want to rent this anymore, I'm ready to sell it. And the lease is up, now they can go.
But the tenant can say, I'm gonna give you 30 minutes, which they can also do.
Tenants can leave at any time if it's at the end of their lease. Do you see what I'm saying? And a lot of times tenants don't know that they can stay, so they leave. And so, you know, that's helpful for landlords. But tenants that do know, and there are some that know.
That's right, there's something. As long as they want.
If they're not paying rent though, that's grounds for eviction. Right? So if there are some grounds, yeah.
I'm sure you're gonna go over it. What if they're damaging your property,
Yep.
causing a nuisance to the neighborhood?
All right, so let me just read, let me see if I have them here. I was hoping it was on my little outline here, because that means I wouldn't have to go like this, but I'm gonna have to. So let me just read a couple of these grounds real quick. We only got a few more minutes, y'all. Just bear with me, okay? I promise y'all. Oh, I can't even figure out how to get the thing up. Yeah, my alarm, it's okay. Okay, I only give myself 5 more minutes. Okay. Grounds for eviction, okay? Failure to pay rent, disorderly conduct. Of course, this sort of thing has to be proven. So you have to anticipate, if you're saying something like disorderly conduct, that you have something to substantiate your claims, okay? Damage or destruction to the property, violation or breach of covenants of the agreement, which again is a high threshold of proof, so you want to make sure that you can prove that. Illegal uses of, you know, drugs or that sort of thing that can be proven. Failure to pay a rent increase. This is a way to do it. So when I represent landlords, this is what I recommend. When we will offer them another lease, but we're going to offer them another lease with a rent increase. And it has to be reasonable. It is limited, it has to be reasonable, but sometimes they cannot or will not pay that increase. Most times I also recommend an added security deposit. So even if they were willing to pay the increased rent, a lot of times tenants don't want to pay an added security deposit. Okay? And those are ways to get them out because they won't, not them, but you know, some of us are tenants, but that's, for those of us who are landlords though, that's a way to consider, you know, moving folks out.
So what's considered a reasonable rent increase?
There's a number, but I can't recall. I can't recall, and I don't want to tell you something that's not right. But it's a percentage. Say it again.
There's a cap in the municipality.
There's not always a cap. So it depends on.
Capitalization rate, do they not?
It depends on the township or municipality that we're talking about. So some townships and municipalities do not have a cap. But there is a reasonableness percentage that the courts have determined. That's in common law, okay? I don't want to tell you that percentage because I don't want you to write it down and it be wrong, okay? But there is a percentage which my paralegal knows, and we make sure that when we send out our letters, we go up to it, but we don't go beyond it, okay? And I think the added security deposit is only 10%. My light will go off any minute. Okay, if the landlord has been threatened, that's per se grounds to get them out. Okay, so I've tried to represent tenants before, but they said something threatening or perceived to be threatening to the landlord by text or anything. The judge saw it and the judge said, counsel, you know, they gotta go. Okay. Tenant continually doesn't pay or pays late. Criminal convictions, not before, during. Okay, so I'm not saying that you have grounds to be like, oh, now sometimes maybe they do. I know there's background checks or all of that, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about once you're in the property and you've been convicted of something, those are grounds for a landlord to get you out, should they decide or they become aware. Yes?
Just to follow up on that question, are landlords allowed to ask for an additional background check after you have accepted them? So it's 1 year later, and part of the new terms of this new lease, we went up to that cap. We've also added a 10% to their security, and in addition to that, we want an updated criminal background. Can we add it?
Are they allowed to? That's a good question. I don't know, but I would err on the side of yes, unfortunately. I would err on the side of yes, they would be allowed to.
And that would be grounds for?
Perhaps, if there was something added. Yeah.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Gloucester Township does a background, like, they do a criminal background check, for buyers.
Okay.
We had a situation that, I know a realtor and I were talking about, that they had a buyer purchasing, not a rental, not for rental, but purchasing to do the background check, to do the CO. They do that in Gloucester City.
City or township?
City.
Okay.
So I don't have any professional advisement on that. I know about that city and that town, and I have thoughts and feelings that, again, I won't share.
But it's something to think about, because.
That's something it's strange to me, because the CO is the responsibility of the seller, and you're saying to me that although that's the responsibility of the seller to get, they still want the information of the buyer.
And they do a background check.
There seems to be a problem with that, but I don't know enough to say enough.
Yeah, I'm not authorizing it, the buyer says yes.
I'm in a transaction.
Authorize it.
Yes.
I'm in a transaction now, and this property is in Burlington City, and this is for a rental, and Burlington City requires a background check in order for the landlord to obtain a CO.
Who are they asking for it for?
Criminal, for the tenants, for all tenants, all adult tenants that are on the lease as well. I questioned it too, I'm like, is that legal?
I think that they're allowed to do it, I just don't think it's in good taste.
It's not.
But fair housing, that's who you want to talk to about that sort of fair housing. Is that fair, sir? All right,
We'll say, whatever other questions we have, we'll let her finish, and then,
Yeah, I don't have time for all my slides, I put in so much effort. But I will say this, landlords can't just kick people out, okay? You can't just go change the locks. It seems like, yeah, that makes sense, but people do it, okay? If you know somebody's out of town for a lengthy period of time and they're on your nerve, they pay the rent, you can't just go in, change the locks, kick them out. You can't do that. Landlords can't do that to you. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. If they do that, you can, as a tenant, you can have an action against them at Superior Court, and the judge can even make them put you back, okay? Then even once you're gone, if you leave items in there and you decide, I don't want to go back, I don't want to deal with that landlord, they can't discard your stuff, okay? It's another thing, because landlords that want to do this sort of thing will lock you out, will put your stuff out to the curb. All of that is nonsense and illegal, okay? Just so you know. Security deposits, I think that's the last thing I want to talk about. Security deposits, what I want you to know about them. They do not belong to the landlord. So when you get that security deposit, don't be like, oh, hey, got first month, last month, and the security deposit all in. No, that is not your money. That is not your money. And there is an act, the Security Deposit Act, that will penalize you if it's found out that you didn't do what you were supposed to do with somebody else's money. So for the length of that tenancy, those funds should be untouched in some sort of account. It doesn't have to be an interest-bearing account unless you are a landlord of 10 or more units, okay? But it needs to be in an account. All right, the court is not like real funny about whether, if you're like an individual landlord or you just have a couple of properties, about whether it's a checking or a savings or if your name is on it or any of that. They don't make a big deal about that. What they care about is that it was put somewhere and untouched. I've had many landlords come to me with no security deposit left. And I'm like, what happened? Where is that money? You're going to have to listen, I don't know what you're going to do, but you're going to do something because it needs to be in an account by the time we get to court. Because now, on the back end, when the whole tenancy is done, tenant has now left. Now you have 30 days to either return that full amount to them or send them a notice itemizing how it was used. Tenants, if after 30 days you have been gone and you have not received your check in whole or part and an itemized list of how those funds of yours were used, you have grounds for an action in Superior Court in New Jersey. And if a judge finds that it was wrongfully withheld or that the numbers that were given to you, the list of repairs, were bogus and can't be substantiated, you're entitled to double your security deposit.
Oh,
Okay, or whatever portion was wrongfully withheld. So if they can show that they withheld a certain part rightfully, they're entitled to keep that. But the part that was wrongfully withheld from you, you're entitled to that times 2. And I get it from people all the time. At least I did.
That's not a small claims court issue?
That falls, it's not small claims.
No?
It's special civil.
Special, okay.
Yeah, it's not small claims. Okay, is that it on security deposit? Yeah, that's about it.
I got a question on security.
Yeah.
Security deposits and management companies. So you moved out and it's been 60 days. You haven't got your security deposit back. You reached out to the actual owner of the property. They put it off on the management company, and the management company puts it, and then it becomes this tennis ball.
Sue both of them.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't, absolutely, you sue both of them.
Are you willing to share your thoughts on management companies?
No. But thank you for asking.
Would you mind touching on discrimination when it comes to your source of income, such as Section 8, but more so the TRA, because I find that people are using the TRA as a...
Can you tell me what the acronym is?
A temporary rental assistance, so it's only for a temporary period of time, so, but it's a source of income. Does that still fall under the protected class like Section 8 does?
Yeah.
It does?
It does. And really, landlords aren't allowed to discriminate against you based on your source of income so long as it's legal. So again, that's something that you would want to go to an agency that advocates against housing discrimination on those sort of matters. Because yeah, that's illegal for them to discriminate. Even though we know that it happens, it is illegal.
In addition to that, some landlords are saying, or I've heard people saying that they're not approved for Section 8. Is that a precursor for the discrimination, or?
I think that they do have to be approved through Section 8 in order to accept those payments.
Right, but if the property is just on the market, how do you know you're not approved until you go through the process?
Well, they have to make application to be approved to be a Section 8 landlord. You don't just get to be one, and you don't just get to accept that voucher. There's some vetting and the application process to be that.
Right, but you won't know until you start the process.
It's true.
So for Section 8, what I would tell people is a lot of times a Section 8 tenant will say, do they accept Section 8, and they haven't even gone through the application process.
Exactly.
So they can't state discrimination unless they have gone through the process, meaning that they filled out the application, they put whatever their source of income in, whether it's Section 8 or TSA, who's going to be, like, all of the information is provided, and then you have a case. But a lot of times I get, even before people have, are you going to take me? You haven't filled out the application. The application will say, what is that? So that's one issue. And Section 8 is really clear about the guidelines of what the property has to have. If the property doesn't have screens, and landlord doesn't want to put screens on the windows, it's not going to be Section 8 approved. If they're doing construction in the basement, it's not going to be Section 8 approved. So there are instances where the landlord or an agent would know if that property is going to be approved by Section 8 once they go through the process. And it's not, people do, I don't, as an agent, take people's money. I say fill out the application. If you pass the screening for the landlord, then we'll take your money, do a background check, and do all of the other checks that we need to do, but not until that point. But everybody's different. So, and some people they do get discriminated against because they have Section 8, but they do still have to go through the process.
And landlords who, because there are strict guidelines about the condition, like was mentioned, of the property. So even if it met the guidelines at one point and then it falls beneath the guidelines, folks can lose their voucher behind a landlord not doing what the landlord is supposed to do. Tenants can lose their voucher if landlord doesn't keep property up. They'll give them another voucher. Not all the time, it depends. It depends. Well, I don't do it anymore, but I just represented someone, and there was a dispute about whose responsibility some things were. And because, so we fought on her keeping her voucher,
So my question is, you're a landlord, and the township takes in, inspects the property every 2 years or 3 years, whatever municipality it is, and then they come back and say, well, you have some things that have to be taken care of, but the tenant has to be displaced for some reason. Whose responsibility is that?
landlord should aid with that.
But should they take on the whole or the?
Yes.
They should.
Yes. Because if you're accepting rent for someone to live somewhere that should be deemed habitable, then you're responsible for providing that. And if you can't provide it and you're in a contractual relationship, then you need to be able to either provide them with alternate housing that meets that level or standard, or release them without consequence to find somewhere else to live. Okay, so I'm at the end. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I really won't really have a chance to do, is habitability, which is actually a good segue. Landlords have to, there is an implied warranty of habitability. There is an implied warranty that you can live in this place. If you're paying for it, you should be able to live in it. If you find, or anybody finds, that a landlord is not doing what they're supposed to do, even though they have knowledge of issues that are in the property, you have some options. Okay? You cannot just go to court, unfortunately, and file an action and say, my landlord is not repairing X, Y, and Z. So what you have to do to prompt an action is withhold the rent. Okay? If you are a tenant that withholds the rent, because I've had this happen too, where they withheld the rent, and then when we go to court, there ain't none. So now, the court doesn't play that, right? So they come and you say, okay, we prompted the landlord to file this action for eviction. Our defense is that the place was a mess and it was not supposed to be that way. The court will say, okay, we're not going to evict you today, but you need to post that full amount of rent that you withheld with the court by 4 p.m. today. If you can't do that, you get evicted. Okay, so if you're going to withhold the rent, do so under advisement. It needs to be somewhere you can get to. Get a money order, put it in a bank account, whatever you can do that you can trust yourself, give it to somebody else that you can trust, so that when you go to court to argue that your landlord is not doing what they're supposed to do, you can post that rent that day with the court and force that landlord to do what they were supposed to do. Your other option, and this is it for me, is to repair and deduct. This is after having said something to your landlord multiple times and they don't do it. Now you take your rent money and you fix whatever the thing is, if you choose to do that. And you must have proof. You must keep proof, okay? Before and after, have pictures and all of that stuff, okay? I think what I want to end with, because there's so much more. You see that? Y'all can see a little bit. There's so much more. I wrote something down I wanted to say. Tenants, okay. Tenants, you don't have to take harassment and intimidation just because your name is not on the deed. And you have rights beyond what most tenants believe that they have. So if you have questions, you need to speak to an attorney. I know that going to an attorney can be scary, it might be an investment, but I'm telling you, we invest in everything else with the things that matter. We don't invest in estate planning, we don't invest in getting education, but we have no problem investing in that cruise. I be going on cruises like, how all these people got thousands of dollars like this, Lord have mercy. It took me forever to try to go on anyway. But I'm saying we come up with the money for that so we can eat nonstop all day, every meal we want. But the stuff that matters for our life, we won't invest in. Right? So I just want you to think about it like that. Yes, there's other people and agencies that will advocate for you, but nobody is a better advocate for you than yourself. You cannot just sit and let things happen. Okay? So what I would say to you is get up, stand up for your right. Okay? Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Sorry we ran out of time, but to be here for a few minutes after we get ready. Just a few more things. just want to thank everyone for being here. Richard Ransom, thank you so much for the reception. Mr. Byard, thank you so much, sir, for helping out. And also, in case anyone doesn't know, we do have IM Media here, who's been, their social platform. They've been live streaming this the whole time this evening. I want to thank you guys for being here tonight. And then also, one last thing, as far as NAREB and what we do and our civic engagement, is that, we are committed in closing the wealth gap. And with that, wanting to, promote black home ownership, because we know that sometimes that's the foundation as far as creating equity, having money, and as far as, sending our kids to school and so forth. But with that, we, with part of our civic engagement initiative, we do go out and do home buyer seminars. We do have a D-free, which is a debt-free curriculum. So we definitely can go to your church. We can do seminars here. But we just want to let you guys know that we're available to the community. And we'll be here, for a few minutes afterwards. So please, before you rush out, make sure you guys say hello, all right?
And everyone, if you make sure you sign in as well, for those of you that are interested, if you like to put an asterisk by your name and you're not interested in receiving emails, please do so. If not, you all will be on our list when we do community events and open it up for everyone. It comes from Constant Contact, so it may, from us, through Constant Contact. What is it? Tip? April. In any case, those of you that follow social media, we try to do our diligent selves on social media, Instagram and Facebook. We are there. We do our announcements of everything that we do. And one of the important things that we have Realtors Week. So in April is our Realtors Week. And we, if y'all see on your, if you take your agendas, which is also Fair Housing Month. April is Fair Housing Month. And so we will be doing a clergy roundtable. So for those of you, your pastors and things like that, to talk about our initiatives that we have. That will be either the 20th or 21st. We're trying to navigate those days. But we also, look out for this because I'm sending emails about it. We're doing a sock drop, what we call it Project Sock Drop. In Camden during the holidays, our holiday give back, we walked around Camden giving out socks to the homeless, and the smallest things matter. So one of the things we want everybody to, why I say look out for these emails, because we're going to figure out a way that if you can't come with us and we give back to our community, we touch and feel our community members. I mean, these are people that are here as well. The smallest things, I think we're going to collect a lot of personal items, soap, toiletries. So look out for that. That'll be in April, and then we'll also have we'll be in Willingboro on the 18th for our Community Day, and we're calling Money Making Moves Wealth Building Day. So that's what we're going to do. We're doing that in partnership with the Coalition of 100 Black Women. So the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, we're partnering with them. You'll probably see Chandra. You'll probably see again. But throughout, everybody remember, the takeaways, 2020 census, we need to do what we need to do to have our households counted, because 10 years, we know, once it's gone, and then another 10 years, we don't want to lose that count. Clara, is there anything, or Tiffany, anybody else? Oh, we have affiliates that's here. With all our affiliates, Richard is one of our affiliates with Miss Sandy. She's our affiliate with ADT. Okay. We have our secretary, Nicole. We have our past treasurer, Miss Jan Costello. You all met Clara, and then we also have my real estate partner, Tiffany Radamicki. She's our treasurer. And we have Norma Sellers, who is also one of our pioneering members. And we have Miss Jackie Dunlap. And Miss So White just left, that's all I think I see. Did I miss anybody else? So we do have membership, those that are in real estate in any part,
And even if you're not, we do have, you know,
free member at large.
yes, member at large. So you guys are welcome to join. We would love you to have your ideas and your input, so we can just keep the train moving.
Yep, so we appreciate your time, we know it's valuable, y'all, and we try to be
Look at that, we
time.
started on time, we're done on time.